So Megan, thank you so much for joining. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. My name is Megan Fitzpatrick, and I'm the founder of the FitzSolution and creator of the Ultimate Selfie, where I help teenagers decide what to do after high school. So I empower them to first identify who they are as people from a strengths and core values perspective, and then help them to confidently answer the question of, is college next or not?
So that question, is college next or not? I think if you would have asked that question maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, probably would have an overwhelming answer like, yes, it needs to be, right? But in this age of alternative learning, alternative training opportunities, and rethinking how we develop and train talent, can you talk more about how you explore that topic with not just the students, but with the parents? How do you approach that?
So it's kind of a dual-sided question, right? So we want to make sure that we break down the stigma of even asking the question. I don't want to go to college, or I'm thinking that maybe college isn't for me. There needs to be a safe place where our youth today can ask that question without being judged. There also needs to be a safe place where, if that answer is no, where they can get qualified information on what other avenues there are, because success looks different in many different capacities. And so when we think about college as a plan for the next 4 years, most parents that I speak to, that is what they're really sold on. They're sold on the fact that they have a guaranteed path for the next 4 years for their child. And trust me, I get it. When you're leaving the home, you want to make sure that there's a safety net, right? And so college has created that in the past. What I advocate towards is creating a plan that also has that same sense of security for them. And so when I talk to people that will say to me things like, oh, well, if they don't go to college, they're not going to be successful, I ask the question of why. Because I want to see where that fear is first, and then be able to navigate and counsel in a way that will help them create the plan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reflecting on that. I mean, there are multiple entities involved in that decision. I remember growing up, my mom equated college with success. And that was the only part of that metric, was you go to college and that equals success. And I think a lot of our students, younger students, still deal, as my accent comes out, still deals with parents who think like that. Can you talk a little bit about how, in that sense, maybe, and I guess also here in Miami, given our population, like, how do you explore that?
Well, I think that what's rooted there, like I said, getting down to the root of where the fear really lies, it's this idea of success is setting them up for financial success. I think that we need to forget about the elephant, talk about the elephant in the room, and really look at what are other ways that they can be quote unquote successful in the financial space of things. The world is their oyster. So there are things like the TEALS program that we spoke about earlier. There are boot camps in which they can learn about coding and UX and UI. One of the most recent things that I'm passionate about is Web3, NFT, and blockchain, and how that's going to open up a world for our younger generations to make a successful future today. And so when we're given these older generations all of the options, that fear kind of dissipates and disintegrates over time, because really it was founded in the fact that that was the only option, and it was something that wasn't available to them. And so their ideas are rooted in what wasn't accessible to them, and now we're living in a day and age where there's multiple things accessible to their children. They just don't know. So part of the education is educating the parents as well.
There are multiple levers to consider in how we change the story, the narrative. And I think the employer perspective, we've never had a time where we've had this many generations working together in the same space, but the decisions, and typically like hiring decisions or decisions that influence the company culture, are still made traditionally by folks in the generation that also had college as kind of like the only answer, which is why many organizations, many companies still have policy in place. You need to have a college degree. How do you navigate that when maybe students ask that kind of question?
So pre-pandemic, pre-2020, this was a question that was difficult to answer. I think one of the silver linings that we're able to see is that our younger generations had a set of skills that was able to open doors that a lot of employers are now paying attention to. And so what we're able to kind of navigate now with the older generations and the younger generations working in the workforce is being able to see this quote unquote social media way of living is actually bringing a different lens to the world of marketing, to the world of being able to navigate and answer their employers' questions, but being able to set up a Zoom room, and what does that look like, and camera angles, and all of that comes into play now because we are working in this dual purpose workplace.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many of you are at organizations that still require a college degree to work there? Just curious. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes a lot of people may not know, but if you go back and look at the fine print, it's there. And it does prevent folks, maybe like some of the students, the young people that you work with. In San Francisco, for example, we, at the time, worked with, I was at a nonprofit called Year Up, and we helped change the policy at Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, which always had a college degree as a requirement, they actually changed that because they started to open up the mindset around what it meant to hire talent and hire for skills, which I think has been the key, one of the key pillars of today's conversation. As you look ahead and see where we're going in society as it relates to workforce, what are some things that you can share? Or maybe what are things you see in the roadmap that could be happening, and not like events, but more like culturally or norms? Like, what are you? How is it trending?
So one of the first things that we do in my program is to take StrengthsFinder by Gallup. And what that helps my participants to be able to identify is their strengths from a perspective of not working from a place of lack. The school institution, as we see it today, when they're failing a class or when they're falling behind, we tend to focus on where their weaknesses are. I really focus on where their strengths are so that when they go into the workforce, their self-confidence and self-worth is higher. And we also work on core values, which can be aligned to many different industries and entities. And when you can speak to an employer from a place of, this is who I am, this is what I represent, and this is what I bring to your company and culture, that's going to be a huge shift for as we move forward in the next iteration of our workforce today. We're working with teens that are asking questions like, how sustainable is this? How can we really look at this from a lens of helping social initiatives? And when I look at my teens, no matter what their social economical backgrounds are, they're asking the same kinds of questions. And so what I see happening with tomorrow's workforce is there's going to be social-driven questions presented back to the employer. What are you doing to help our environment? And where do my core values fit in with yours?
Awesome. Well, Megan, please, round of applause for Megan. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. Reflect on this ever-changing, growing topic, as I'm sure we'll be able to talk about it.